Hello everyone, John here, and today I just want to sit back calmly and concisely and talk over who owns the rights to the character, Spider-Man, because this has been a point of confusion for many fans for years now, and that's because the public-facing image I think would lead you to believe that Sony own all of Spider-Man, and this is quite simply not true. So let's just look at it how it is. So Sony have been producing and distributing Spider-Man movies for 2 decades now. Over on the PlayStation side, they've released an entire trilogy, developed by their own studio, and under the PlayStation Studios branding. And of course, in the Avengers game, Spider-Man was exclusive to the PlayStation version. You couldn't play as him on Xbox or PC, that was simply a PlayStation exclusive character. So why is all of this? Well, without going into too much depth, basically back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Marvel was struggling big time. They were facing bankruptcy. Comics just were not as lucrative as they used to be. And so they decided to sell off their film rights in a very desperate attempt to make some money. This has for many years put franchises like X-Men and Fantastic Four out of the grasp of the MCU, because Marvel sold them to Fox. But then eventually Disney bought Fox anyway, putting the rights back to Marvel, so that's all well and dandy for the MCU. But Spider-Man is a lot more complicated, because when it came to Spider-Man, Marvel offered Sony the rights to many characters, not just Spider-Man. They offered the rights to Spider-Man, Iron Man, Thor, Black Panther, Ant-Man, and maybe even more characters for just $25 million. Which is absolutely nuts to think about in this day and age, given how big those characters are now. But Sony declined that offer and said, don't give us any of those characters, we just want Spider-Man for $7 million. And that is how Sony have the film rights to Spider-Man, because Marvel was so desperate that they gave away one of their biggest characters, the film rights at least, for just $7 million. And that's what Sony's riding on today. And this isn't just really Spider-Man either. They didn't sell them Peter Parker, they sold them the Spider-Man IP film rights. So many characters who are associated with Spider-Man are in the control of Sony. Now, in this agreement, Sony must make a film every 5 years, or else the rights return back to Marvel. So it's within Sony's best judgment to continue making Spider-Man films, and that is partially why we see so many spin-offs, like Morbius, and Kraven, and Madame Web, and Venom. So all in all, an incredible deal for Sony for just $7 million. And that first Spider-Man movie, worldwide, made $821 million. But for Marvel, they didn't really get a lot of that back. Their contract basically only allowed them to profit on the original theatrical release, and only 5% of that as well. So Sony had a lot of money in their pockets after this Spider-Man movie, whereas Marvel, not so much. But given how little Marvel were making from these movies, they decided to make their own division, being Marvel Studios. Now, the problem was, most of their big A-star characters had been sold off to other companies like Universal and Sony and Fox. So they were stuck with Iron Man and Captain America, characters no one cares about. But they managed to, of course, turn them into A-listers, and it got to the point where Sony was struggling with Spider-Man. So when Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4 was facing trouble, they just rebooted the entire franchise with Andrew Garfield being Peter Parker now. But then, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 underperformed both critically and financially, and in leaked Sony emails, they basically revealed that they had no idea what to do with Spider-Man, which eventually led to them licensing Spider-Man in the MCU. So Sony still own all the film rights, all the film character rights to Spider-Man. They just allow him to share within the MCU because it benefits everybody. So, there's no question whether Sony Pictures own the film rights to Spider-Man. They do. They can do whatever they want with Spider-Man in feature films. They can do things like Into the Spider-Verse. They can do things like villain spin-offs. It's unclear whether Spider-Man can feature in their villain spin-offs. There may be a contract obligation that they've signed with the MCU. I'm not familiar with that side. But yes, Sony own the Spider-Man film rights. But when it comes to any other form of media, they do not. In fact, what's quite interesting is Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, which is a Nintendo Switch exclusive, not only features Spider-Man and Miles and Gwen as playable characters, but their voice actors are the exact same as those found in the Insomniac games. So Yuri Lowenthal is Peter.
You know, delivering supervillains to the raft is usually a lot of boring paperwork, but this... is a total riot.
And Najee is Miles.
All of this is just so much bigger than us. I mean, I can barely do my own laundry. Stopping cosmic annihilation is a bit outside my comfort zone.
If another Marvel vs. Capcom game were to happen, there would be nothing stopping Spider-Man from appearing in all versions of the game. In fact, we saw this a few years back with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite featuring both Spider-Man and Venom in all versions. So, I guess the final thing to address is how are Sony doing an exclusive series of Spider-Man games if they don't own the character? And the answer is very simple. They are paying a buttload for it. We actually know exactly how much they're paying for it. So, the Insomniac leak happened, and there's many bad parts of that leak containing employee information, and there's also a bunch of game leaks. Their entire lineup got leaked. But also a lot of finances got leaked too, including budgets, and in there is the Marvel fee for Miles Morales, which is a smaller game. So the fee may even get higher depending on the context of the project, but I won't put the imagery up here, but the actual number that Sony are paying Marvel for just Miles Morales to get the Spider-Man license is $106.5 million. And that's for one game. We did also learn the budgets of the Spider-Man remaster, which cost $40 million, and Spider-Man 2, which cost $315 million. And I think it's safe to assume a large amount of those budgets were just the licensing fees. And we know at minimum it's 106.5 for a new game. The remaster's probably much less, but Spider-Man 2, most likely, it could be that half of its budget went on Marvel licensing. And this is all to say that outside of feature films, Sony have no upper hand on Spider-Man. They can still use the character if they pay a lot of money for it, but that's the same for any other company or publisher. If Xbox wanted to make a Spider-Man game, they may have some trouble now given the contracts already in place for Sony to use him with Marvel, but they could have also paid $100 million themselves. In fact, they've probably paid a very large sum to get the Blade rights on Xbox. But yeah, I hope this cleared some things up, because I know this has been a very confusing point for many people for many years now. But yeah, the gist is, no, Sony don't own the character Spider-Man. They only own the film rights to Spider-Man. Thank you for watching, everyone, and have a great 2024. Catch you next time. Bye.